I think without further ado, we can probably get started. I saw another join or two there. Okay, so Patrice, if you're ready, we'll get started. I'm Sam Bogoch with Axle AI, and I'm joined here by Patrice Gouttebel and Katie Scott, also of Axle AI. We'll be going through kind of an update and Q&A session regarding Axle AI. Also on today's call, Patrice is going to be doing a short demo of our latest Connector AI 2020 software, which we just rolled out last week, and which has a bunch of very cool new features for today, our largest customers. But we think that over the next few months and years that this will be of broader and broader appeal more generally. So we'll be talking a little bit about kind of those advanced features, and also just opening the floor for questions and answers. If you do have questions, please use the Q&A box, which is, you can see that in an icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. There's also a chat option, which I guess you can use that as well. So it gives you a couple of ways to reach out to us as we talk about stuff. So with that, I think let me maybe begin by just talking briefly about our company and kind of where Connector fits in. Also, we will probably touch on our third product, Ascribe, towards the end of the call. We have a pretty significant announcement coming out on that next week, so we can't spill the beans too much, but we can hint at generally the direction that we're taking there, which is a pretty promising one. So for those who don't know, Axle AI is a software company, and we focus on search and remote management software for video. We work with not only the kinds of people you might expect, like broadcasters and movie studios, but also a whole bunch of folks that you might not expect, everything from sports teams to churches, corporate video teams, government video, etc. So there are many segments, market segments, where video is used quite a bit. And most of those are actually showing higher growth than the broadcast industry right now. But of course, traditionally, broadcast is the main place you would find high quality video, but with the rise of social media, it's a lot more diverse and, popping up everywhere from like election campaigns to not-for-profits to YouTubers. It's a pretty wide range. So that's what our software does, the Axle AI flagship software. We have a little over 600 customers for that. And what we've seen over the last few years is that with the increasing need for this kind of software, the customers who deploy it will often ask for a little something extra. They'll say, well, I love everything about the software, but I have this unique little workflow that I do, and if you could solve that for me, that would be pretty great. Now, traditionally in the video industry, the way that companies do that is by customizing their software. So if you look at the legacy vendors that are also in our space, people like Delette or Avid or BizRT, they will typically deploy these big complex systems, and then they'll customize them kind of all over. So there'll be a little hook over here, a special function over there. They'll start modifying the source code, and pretty soon you'll have a very different beast than the standard product. The customers pay a huge amount for these customizations, often in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the worst thing is that when they're done paying for all that, they essentially have worse software because there's so much unique stuff built into it that when a new release of the main software comes out, there's a very high likelihood that it will break. And then you have to rebuild a lot of those customizations later on. The closest analogy in IT software would be something like an SAP deployment. And for anyone who's been through those, you know that there's a lot of pain and suffering involved. So we aren't big fans of that approach, and we've tried to keep our software very, for lack of a better term, shrink wrapped. In other words, you get the current release of the software, so do 590 plus other people. We put out the release, everybody gets it at once. It has the same capabilities. Now, the challenge and the opportunity was how to address the needs of this segment of our customers who wanted special workflows without diluting the product discipline of our main product. And our answer to that was Connector. We came out with it about 1.5 years ago. It's done very, very well for these larger accounts. And typically what they ask it to do is a layer of custom functionality. So they'll say, I really wish, in addition to what Axel does, I really wish I had something that would copy my files from here to there, or transcode them into a half dozen formats, or move them through a high-speed file transfer protocol and do an MD5 checksum when they arrive to make sure that it's exactly the same file. These kinds of functional steps are usually done manually in video, and kind of the opportunity and the breakthrough with Connector is to do a cost-effective engine, a workflow engine, for lack of a better term, that will do these things without digging too deep into what our core platform does. And by keeping it separate, it's that much more maintainable, and it ensures that we don't lose the product discipline on the core product. So that's basically Connector in a nutshell. Another way of thinking about it, if you're familiar with, in the personal productivity space, things like Zapier or If This Then That, these are like mobile apps where you can create little rules, and let's say when you get a wake-up call, it'll send a message to your coffee machine and start it heating up or something like that. Or in the web environment, they're often used for sales automation. So when someone fills out a web form, it enters them into the CRM, and then another trigger goes out and emails the sales rep and says, hey, you've got a new lead in your CRM, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very similar thing, but just think of it for video, right? It's all the stepwise processes that you would like to do with your videos, but that are too cumbersome to do by hand. So that's Connector in a nutshell. From the initial release, we've been making very good progress with it, and we've had a number of big customer wins at places like Mediaset in Italy, which is the largest private broadcaster there, Telefonica in Spain, which is the largest telco in Spain, and I believe in all of Southern Europe. And then also here in the US at places like NextVR, which is rumored to have just been bought by Apple for $100 million. That's pretty interesting. And also for a major sports league. So each of these use cases has been somebody who needed something a little extra beyond Axel. They were willing to pay for it. In general, these are pretty significant accounts, and of course, they're also big names. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to Patrice, who can talk about specifically what's new about the latest release of Connector, Connector.ai 2020.
Thank you, Sam, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here. And let's get started by me sharing my screen, and I will briefly give you an overview as to how Connector works. There we go. So this is the user interface of Connector. So Connector is a workflow automation tool, just like Sam mentioned, similar to Zapier. Even if you actually use a Mac and you actually use Before Automator, it's actually very similar. So you actually have a diagram that will describe each steps and rules, and what do we do, and which information do we pass along with cable. So how is it going to look? We are just going to do a small like hello world workflow just to show you how it works. You have the diagram block right here in the middle, the logs mechanism and messages, so when you have any errors. And on the right side here, you have everything you need for basically how many workflows do I have, or how many tasks, different information, searching, and monitoring of memory and everything else. So these little tabs here. So by right-clicking, I can choose already by categories what I may need. And you will see that we have database access, file manipulation, connection to Axel, movie transcoding, image processing, and whatnot. So I'm just going to have a UI event right here, a button that is going to trigger an action. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to use here in this case a print. I'm going to print string, and we are just going to pass information here. So I have two blocks, drawing the cable. Notice that we always have a failure or success, so you can have different tasks depending on failure, on success. So if it fails, you can send an email, you can send a text message or something like that. So these triangles give me access to the flow. The circles are basically the data that I receive. I can either send along data by drawing a cable from one data port to another, or I can just feed it directly, and I'm just going to do hello world. Without typo would be much better. And I can continue as much as I need. And by running the project and pressing the button, here we go. I have my hello world that appears here. So I went from here to here. Now, we're not going to spend the whole webinar watching me draw some lines. So actually, let's go to another, to one specific workflow that may be useful. And here, what I'm going to look at would be a simple watch folder. So I'm going inside a folder, list its content, and for each new files, I'm going to make a copy to another location. In this case, we are going to use Dropbox. And in the middle, we are going to do a quick file checksum. So this is something that is very important to a lot of people, but even more so to videos, because you cannot reshoot something. If you lose a footage, you will have either to reshoot it, but typically you don't want to, because it costs a lot of money to bring all the involved parties. So they always have one or multiple verified copy from one location to another. And I have again my little button. So I'm going to run a project. I will talk about these errors later on, but let's see what I'm going through. I'm going through my desktop inside a folder called Watch Folder Connector and saving to the Dropbox upload. And notice how I pass along multiple times the same element. So the element that I retrieve will be the file path, which I'm using for the checksum and as the source of my copy. Moving on to my desktop, we have the connector watch folder right here. Getting to my Dropbox, we said we had the Dropbox upload. Let's organize by date so I can find it. I'm just going to delete this file so just we can replicate that. And here we go, trigger. You will see the little pulses and the copies. I have chosen very small files and see how actually I have the upload that have happened here in my Dropbox. Now I mentioned these little errors. Something tells me there was an error, and that's because I'm doing nothing with these blocks. But I wanted to still show you what other delivery mechanism we have with Connector. You have the possibility to upload to Vimeo or to YouTube. Quick fact is if you need multiple functions associated to one category, this is what we call the expose functions, or even FTP. So there are other ways to do that. And I'm just going to show you another workflow. And this one would be really for connection with Axel and scripting. So this is what we are going to do. See, this time I'm not going to use a button. We are going to have a 1 second trigger. So every second something is going to happen. You can change that. And we are going to the command line. See that we can use shell script here to do something. So I can use shell script. This is how I could code Python or other kind of coding languages. And what I want to do is create a string and see that I'm actually passing the result in between. So I have the beginning, whatever is returned by my script, and the end. And we are saving this. So we are creating a value that can be reused in another workflow. And I'm going to take here every second, connecting to my Axel system to perform a search And based on the age of the file, that's what we are doing, I'm going to send it to tape, to be archived to tape. Now, notice that I have disconnected that. Again, for saving time, I just want to show you quickly how it works, not necessarily perform the full task. Going to run the project. And here we are. So see the pulse, and look at here the string that is being changed every second. So that basically is the response of my script. And if I were to check my Axel element, you will see again here the search script, the search query, sorry, is being updated every second. So I perform my search. Now, when you look for archiving files, you will not necessarily do every second. You may do every 24 hours or every week. This is something you can do with the TCall scheduling. And lastly, I just wanted to show you other level of integrations that you can have, such as making REST API calls to other tools. So certainly with connector, you can have Axel talk to another vendor without having the two companies talk to each other. You can develop that for you. You can do some JavaScript as well. You can parse some JSON. You can create XML or parse Excel spreadsheets. All of that is at your disposal. So it's very powerful and flexible as to what you can do with connector. And last but not least, due to the requirement for everybody to work remotely, we have created with connector a couple tools that will be helpful. One is in the new connector 2020 that we are releasing, we are letting people use it to create editing proxies. So when you edit files, they can be extremely heavy and large. But if you're remote, you may not have the bandwidth to edit on these files directly. So different video editing solutions will use what they call proxy editing, meaning a smaller file that you can use so that it's smooth when you edit, but when you render the output, it will be from the original high res. But you need to have them already available. And this is what connector will do for companies that may need that. Couple new things that we have. First, we have the possibility, as you can see here, to change different settings straight from the interface. That is new compared to what existed before, including, okay, what will be my watch folder? And fun thing is you can actually do, I need to update the variable. There we go. So I need to update the variable. Here with the label, you can drag and drop folders directly. So let's take the same watch folder that I had in my desktop. Where is it? I do videos for connector right here. And here we go. And the output path we want to have, I'm going to put inside log. I'm just going to do that. So again, delete, drag and drop. So I can edit directly right here. And we are just going through. Notice that we use FFmpeg or any other compression method, transcoding tools. And we are going to replicate the folder structure. So it's much more complex. And I'm reusing this slider as a progress bar. And let's run it. And it's going to run every 2.5 seconds. And here we go. I saw some pulse. And you will see the progress bar going. And we are going. Now look at what is going on here. So I have one specific path to the original file. Going to my logs folder, I replicate the exact same folder structure. So me, as a user, I know exactly what I will need to edit. And that has been a very quick run through connectors. And I see that there are some questions. So let's actually take a quick look at that. Oh, I did not mean to stop sharing. Sorry, let's actually, just in case we need, I'm going to
That's
have
okay.
that.
Yep, I actually was just typing some comments and trying to encourage folks. I don't think we've got any formal Q&A yet.
I'll see.
But that being said, hopefully we encourage that. The point I just made on the chat is, of course, this is sort of behind the scenes stuff, and
Yeah.
what's neat about it is that it doesn't require people to be programmers too much. They can kind of drag and drop what they want to happen, and it even, as you've seen, kind of animates the links and the steps between the different chunks of the workflow. But still, this is a pretty hardcore technology, and I would say today this applies in about 10% of our deals, and we expect that over the next year or two, that we're going to find more and more mainstream uses for it, but it's still not going to be for even most professionals. The key is whether a company has repetitive workflows that they want to automate. And to Patrice's examples, most often these have to do with format conversions where, like, I don't know if people know this, but when you see a movie on your mobile device, generally that movie has been processed into dozens and sometimes hundreds of variants. There'll be one for Android phones, one for iPhones, one for iPads, one for laptops, and different bandwidths, adaptive bandwidth, etc.
4K TV and so on.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Different languages as well.
That's right. And then there's also variations that are cultural, like in the Middle East, there are many places like Saudi Arabia where there's absolutely no nudity allowed. So they'll take a Western movie and they'll get rid of all the nudity, and that'll be a separate version. And then for that geography, you still need the iPhone, the Android, the iPad, so the smart TV version, etc. It is very quickly into the hundreds of variants. And that's now necessary for almost every kind of content you want to put out. So these kinds of automated workflows are part and parcel of that. And in the past, they were done by pretty expensive specialized engines that often cost in the tens of thousands of dollars. Here, we're offering this for thousands of dollars. So it's a much more reasonable, still not cheap, but by comparison, to either buying a very expensive system or writing a lot of code, this is a pretty breakthrough capability. So let's see.
We have a question actually.
Okay, super.
Yeah, so is it independent of Axle? Do I need an Axle copy to actually run connector? That's actually a very good question. And no, the cool thing about what we are showing you here is we have 3 different products that we are selling. And we have Axle, which is our flagship. The Axle is a repo of all your video and audio files that we can then use some AI bits to help you find your clip. In this example, we run it through speech transcription. So you have what is being said that will become searchable. You can also run it to find on facial recognition and others. That is Axle. That is our flagship product that Sam mentioned earlier. Now, it is true that I showed you an example where in connector where you use Axle to send to archive. But the other example, this particular example here, does not require Axle. It's an independent product, which will go with our bigger deals. Or we have, in rare occasions, some companies that will just use connector without Axle. The challenge for us will be to actually market this product on its own outside of the Axle scope. And lastly,
I would agree. I would actually add to that it is a big, the media software market is a big and diverse place. And to Patrice's point, the big thing for Connector is just to kind of give it a kind of breakthrough brand of its own. We've done a fair amount with branding on Axle, but until now, Connector has been kind of a well-kept secret, and we're working to change that.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. And lastly, we have a third product, which you actually might find very interesting as potential investors. And that will be the freemium that we have here. So we actually we have this freemium that will be tied into our SaaS model for transcription, which means that I can just go and say, for example, a phone call with somebody, and I will have the whole transcript on the other side here. Or it can be your any kind of video, this kind of interview that you have. So you have, or you can be Zoom meetings, any kind of video and audio files. The thing is, we'll be tied into our own interface, our own SaaS pricing model for transcription, which is extremely affordable compared to the competition. And this is something that we expect will actually gather a lot of growth in revenue. Not only that, but it will also give us an opportunity to broaden the market to whom we can talk to about, hey, now that you have all this footage with a transcript, for example, maybe you need to find a tool that will allow you to search them. And you can then manage a project. That will be the Axle bit. You need something that will actually help you automate everything. This is Connector. So this is actually the kind of ramp up approach that we are taking, knowing full well that in today's world, everything is about SaaS model and subscription based, the least amount of money possible. This is what we are doing first with the Scribe here, this transcription freemium that is going to be available on both Mac and PC relatively soon.
Yeah, so the announcement we have next week is around this Ascribe product, and again, we'll have to wait until next Monday. But actually, if you want to join us for next Monday's 3 p.m. call, we will be fully public with that announcement. It has to do with a new partnership, and also essentially some of what Patrice is previewing here. So it should be a pretty interesting call. And yeah, I mean, to Patrice's point, Ascribe gives us access to a much larger pool of freelancers and independent creatives than we are able to reach with our existing products. We've already had over 1,000 signups, for instance, of people for the initial versions of Ascribe, which are panels for Adobe Premiere. And the direction we're going is to offer it in different formats and different contexts, but with the same functionality. So with that being said, let's see if there are any additional questions. There's only 2 minutes left in the call, actually.
Yeah, actually, there's a follow-up on the pricing. Oops, sorry, Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say we can run a little long if need be. So, but go ahead, Patrice.
Yeah, there's a follow-up actually. Since we talked about the SaaS model of Ascribe, what is the pricing structure for Connector or Axel? Is there a SaaS model? Is there a fixed price? What is the pricing?
So we've been offering it primarily at a fixed price for a perpetual license with annual maintenance, but we have just phased in SaaS pricing across our product lines, and so Connector is typically priced in the thousands of dollars as a one-time license, and in the hundreds of dollars per month as a SaaS license. And it really depends on configuration. There's also some professional services billing that goes on, because generally when we set up a new Connector site, one of our PS folks goes in and does the initial configuration, and then we leave it to the customer from there. But it's typically a half day or a day of initial setup, which we can bill for, and that's in addition to the price of the software itself. All right. Any other questions? Thanks for those good questions so far.
Yeah, that's been very helpful.
All right. Well, with that, unless there is another question, since we're right on the nose at the half hour, I want to thank everybody for your time. Hope you can join us next week, because we'll have some, I think, very interesting announcements. And enjoy your week and stay safe out there.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. Bye.
Thank you.